My background is I studied at Wits University, then I moved over to Deloitte to do my articles. I stayed on there for a couple of years and moved into a more corporate finance role and realized I was a lot more entrepreneurial than your typical chartered accountant. And then I moved into academia. And the main reason was to have space to do other things as well. And at that point in time, I actually opened a restaurant. So I was doing academia with the restaurant at the same point in time. I stayed there for a while. During that period, I also did a couple of different things, including I was a partner in an audit firm, a technical partner in an audit firm. And then eventually decided to leave to start the Institute of Accounting Science. And that's where I am now. Our accreditations, there's 4 of them that we have to have, one of which is SAICA, and then we accredited with the Department of Higher Education as well as SACRA and something called the HEQC. If you put those 4 together, we provide the same product, exactly the same product as a university. So we are essentially a commercial provider that provides the same qualification. And I think that gives us the opportunity to compete. We do compete with the universities and to try and contribute to the skill shortage through another avenue. And we've tried to differentiate our program quite a lot. And the differentiation is mainly around trying to provide a work-ready CA, because when we decided to do this, we did a lot of research with the firms saying, when you get somebody from the universities, what is missing, or what would you like them to have, what other skills? And we designed our program around that, saying what do we think the CA in the future is going to look like, and what are the firms missing? And we've redesigned our entire program to incorporate all of that in addition. So I think somebody joining us gets a very different experience to somebody going to one of the traditional universities. We have a lot of staff. My general principle is, if you're going to teach it, you must either be doing it or you've done it before. So it can't be theoretical. It must be, when you do something, you must come with the practical side of how do you implement this, so that when you get into the workplace, it's not trying to do that, let me try and match the theoretical with what you're actually asking me to do. That's already there. Ethics is the cornerstone of our profession, and if you think of what we do, it's what we trade on, is the ethical side. We build it into our program. It's not something separate that you can see separately. So for instance, we do a case study, which we've chosen this year, we've done Steinhoff. So everywhere, even though you're teaching something like let's do evaluation using Steinhoff, inevitably all the ethical issues are coming out all of the time. So we make sure that it's not something that you see as a separate thing. A colleague of mine did a study, and the study was based on, can you teach ethics in a university environment? And the conclusion in her master's that she came to was no. Not in a formal setting of saying this is ethical and that is not, and that's what you should do. You actually have to embed it in the material and say, in this circumstance, there's where we sit, what are you going to do? Such as Steinhoff. And I think that's when the true ethical behavior comes through. I think the introduction of NOCLAR as well. My initial reaction to NOCLAR was actually, I'm worried about it because it's putting an obligation on CAs that others don't have. If I sit in a board meeting with an engineer, I'm going to be the one with the responsibility on them, not the engineer. And then I kind of came to a realization of, yes, and that is appropriate, is that we have the skills, we have the responsibility to actually interpret what needs to be interpreted, and we then have the knowledge to go and actually ask the questions that need to be asked, and we should have that responsibility. So I think that will come through a lot harder as well.
Because in our current environment, there's risk all the time. If you think of the nature of an audit profession, the risk aspect is something that we are conscious of all the time. But it's also always a toss-up between risk and managing risk and compliance and keeping the clients happy, which is always a challenge. But where the issue comes in, where I feel that there's a lack of knowledge or a lack of ability to interpret, is in the legal field. Because of the fact that if something comes across our desks, it's become where there's maybe one or two people in the firm who can assist with it, and then we need to go to attorneys to obtain any kind of advice before we can even respond to something. The importance of digital involvement and where we're going with that, if you look at blockchain or what something similar, it is obviously becoming more and more important, but it's also extremely disruptive. And I think that's where you also have the element of unlearn and relearn. And I think that's very relevant for our existing CAs. For those for where we're perhaps going to be changing a curriculum or looking at changing a curriculum or a thinking process, or perhaps re-looking at your trainees' competencies, it's probably something that they will be more au fait with and something they can be more prepared for. But if I look at your existing qualified CAs, or say your existing partners, I think it's going to be a lot of unlearning and relearning. Having said that, the importance of the digital aspect we cannot ignore at all, because we know it's going to happen. But I still feel very strongly that it's not going to take away from the role of a chartered accountant, because at the end of the day, a machine is a machine, and there's someone behind the machine who inputs something into it. And so you need to understand that too. And that, I think, you need the CA skill for, and then obviously to interpret what comes out after that.